Chok Shabbat Yom, brothers and sisters, Hebrews in Jamaica, the Caribbeans, the West, to the four corners of the earth, scattered greetings. This Shabbat lesson, we're going to tackle 5 loaves, brothers and sisters. 5 loaves and the significance of it. Right? 5 loaves and the significance of it, brothers and sisters. So we're going to take it from the Bezorah, the Gospel, Yakanan, John 6, 1-15 is on the screen, brothers and sisters. After these things, Yahushua went over the sea of Galilee, which is the sea of Tiberias. And a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. And Yahushua went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. And the Passover, a feast of the Yahudi Jews, was nigh. When Yahushua then lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, When shall we buy bread that these may eat? Now, why do you think Yahushua asks a question, brothers and sisters? It's not that because Yahushua didn't know that these people was going to be a hunger that need to be fed. No, brothers and sisters. He asked a question to test Philip to see what his response would be. Right? And hear what he says in the next line. And this he said to prove him. There you go. Right? So the Moses asks a question to prove him, to see what would his response be. Right? And the very same next verse, he said, and this he said to prove him, for he himself knew what he would do. Exactly. Because he's the Mashiach, he's all-knowing. You see, he's Elohim. Right? Philip answered, 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take a little. One of the disciples, Andrew, Simeon, Caiaphas, Peter's brother, said unto him, There is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? And Yahushua said, Make the men sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, in numbers about 5,000. And Yahushua took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were sat down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. You see. And when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost, brothers and sisters. So you see right here in chapter 11, in verse 11, where the Mosai, after he distributed the bread, right, what did the Mosai did? He blessed it. And Yahushua took the loaves, and when he had give thanks, so give thanks mean he was praying, brothers and sisters. So you gotta ask the question, who is he praying to? Who is the Mashiach praying to, brothers and sisters? You know, the common sense question would be his father, because he came in his father's name, right? He can't do nothing without his father. The Father is in him. When you see me, you see the Father. I and the Father are one. That's what the Mashiach said, brothers and sisters. That's what he says. Right? So if that's what he said, brothers and sisters, again, the Trinity is so real. Because here you have in this depiction the Son on earth giving thanks. So who is he praying to? He's not praying to himself. Mashiach is not praying to himself. He's praying to someone. And that's his Father. So the Father is communing with the Son. The Son is communing with the Father. And the Ruach HaKodesh is there. Triune Eliyahu. You see, brothers and sisters. So in verse when they were filled, he said unto his disciples, Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets. So again, the number 12 represents the 12 tribes. Therefore they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragment of the 5 barley loaves which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle that Yahusha did, said, This is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world. When Yahusha therefore perceived that they would come and take him by force to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone, brothers and sisters, right? So what can we learn, brothers and sisters? You may be familiar with the story in John as we just went over it, 1 to 15. We find Yahusha and his disciples watching a crowd that had been following Yahusha come towards them. Yahusha asked his disciples Philip where he thought they could buy bread for the crowd. For the crowd had not eaten in a while, Philip stated the impossibility of them providing every bread, because that's the doubt he had. You understand, brothers and sisters? That's the doubt he had, not realizing who is standing right next to him. You see. But the disciples found a boy with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, his meal. The boy gives up his food to the disciples, and Yahusha then takes the meal, blesses it, and begins to break it in pieces. So, brothers and sisters, so the miracle that take place right after the Messiah, Yahusha multiplied the 5 loaves and fishes, right? 12 baskets full was left, and that boy had more than enough to take home. Yes, sir. So his blessing increased, and the people's blessing was increased that day, right? So the breaking did not cease, brothers. It kept multiplying, and everyone to the crowd was full. And even, brothers, even then there were 12 baskets full of loaves left. Right? Can you relate to the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, brothers and sisters? Can you relate to the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes? You feel that your resources are so little and wonder what Eliyahu could ever do with them. Don't get discouraged. Keep your hands open. Right, brothers? Here are 5 reasons we learn from the boy in John 6, right? Eliyahu is in control, right? In verse 6 we read these words, but he was saying this only to test him, for he himself knew what he intended to do, brothers and sisters. Yahusha had asked Philip the question about buying bread, not because he wanted a solution, but because he wanted faith. None of what was transpiring caught Yahusha off guard. He wasn't concerned. He was in control. The boy with 5 loaves and 2 fishes saw this firsthand. Eliyahu doesn't need the money we possess to accomplish his mission. Let me repeat, Eliyahu doesn't need the money we possess to accomplish his mission. Let me repeat, Eliyahu doesn't need the money we possess to accomplish his mission. He isn't in heaven anxiously wringing his hands, wondering if we will set up financially so his mission can proceed. Right? The Most High doesn't need these earthly things. He's from heaven. We are from earth. We need this thing because we on earth. This is man's design. This is how we trade amongst each other. You understand? And if we don't leverage our resources for his purposes, Eliyahu will not throw up his arms in exasperation and walk away from the mission dejected. No, Eliyahu doesn't need us for his already victorious mission, but he does invite us to participate, to join him in victory. He is in control. The boy learned this on that very day, brothers and sisters. Eliyahu is about multiplication, right? Eliyahu is about multiplication. Eliyahu is about multiplication, brothers and sisters. As the boy handed his meal to the disciples and Yahusha, he likely wondered what difference such a small amount of food could make among the large crowd. It would not be surprising if the boy assumed he and his meal would be turned away asked to return to his friend or family. His meal was small and the need was so great. But then Yahusha took hold of the food and began to break it into pieces. The small meal turned into a feast that was more than enough to fill the stomachs of the crowd. He takes that which is left, he takes that which insufficient he takes that which is insufficient and uses it to accomplish his purpose. He took an elderly childless couple and made a people more numerous than the stars. He used a small group of people in a house to start his global body. Or Eliyahu can make whatever he is given in faith and multiply its impact in infallible ways. For his mission, Eliyahu is about multiplication. The boy learned this on that day. Multiplication often requires trust. At some point, the boy had to release the food he possessed. At some point, he had to settle in his heart and mind that the food was not his to hold. At some point, he had to determine that he was not the one who dictated how the food was to be used. Was the boy hungry in that moment? Possibly. Did the boy have doubts whether his food could be helpful? Probably. Did the boy wonder whether his needs would be met? It is likely, but he released the food nonetheless. Why would we release the possession we hold? Trust. Giving and holding possessions loosely requires trust. Trust that Eliyahu will use the resources for his purposes. Trust that Eliyahu will care for our needs. The boy with the meal saw the few fish and loaves he once held multiply in a miraculous way. In Yahusha's hands, the small meal became great, but it took an act of trust to get the meat into Yahusha's hand. Multiplication often requires trust. The boy learned this on that day. Multiplication often requires sacrifice, brothers and sisters. The boy made a great sacrifice, much like the widow who gave 2 coins in the temple treasury. The boy gave all that was in his possession. The act was likely a painful one, maybe not physically painful, but mentally and possibly emotionally. The boy went from comfortable having sustenance to uncomfortable having no sustenance. That is how sacrifice works. Sacrifice drives out comfort. Sacrifice is uncomfortable, but sacrificial giving is what we find celebrated in Scripture. Eliyahu looked favorably on Abel's offering because he sacrificed his best. Eliyahu blessed Abraham because he was willing to sacrifice his son. Yahusha pointed out the widow with 2 coins because she gave all she had. Biblical giving is sacrificial, and Eliyahu uses the sacrifice to shape the giver's heart and advance his kingdom. Multiplication often requires sacrifice. The boy learned this on that day. Multiplication is a result of Eliyahu's work, not our work. The boy handed over his meal. This was certainly an act of trust and sacrifice, but the boy did not feed the 5,000, nor did the disciples feed the 5,000. The boy and the disciples were simply participants. The people were fed by Yahusha. Stomachs were filled because an act of Eliyahu took place. Apart from this act, the people would have remained hungry. His act allowed the boy to participate in Eliyahu's work. The same is true for us. Eliyahu wants us to trust him with our possessions and work to advance his kingdom, but ultimately it is not our possessions or work that will cause the multiplications. We give and work knowing that it is Eliyahu who is in control, and it is his work that causes multiplication. While we eagerly participate in his mission, he multiplied the bread and fish. Right? Multiplication is a result of Eliyahu's work, not our work. The boy learned that on that day. The boy learned this on that day, brothers and sisters. The boy with 2 fish and loaves learned a lot that day. He learned Eliyahu is in control and that he is about multiplication. He learned that multiplication often starts with an act of trust and sacrifice, and he learned that while he certainly get to participate, right? He gets to participate. It is ultimately Eliyahu who brings about the multiplication. So if you feel you have little, look to the boy with 2 fishes and 5 loaves. Remember what he learned that day. Trust Eliyahu with your resources and let him multiply those resources in ways you could have never imagined, brothers and sisters. So let us put our trust and hope in Yah, in Yahusha's name. Right, brothers and sisters, and be willing participant in the glorious victory which is already written, that was given unto Yah in Yahusha's name, brothers and sisters. But first you got to put in your works too. Be a participant like the boy and like Abraham, right, and our patriarchs. Right, brothers and sisters. So on that note, Brok Yahuwah Tzivahot, Brok Yahushua Mashiach, Shina, Vishina, bless the love and shalom.